In this video, I'm going to show you everything you need to know to build the best turret towers. Hello Dodo crew and welcome back to another video on ARK Ascended. Grab a bottle of water and let's get straight into it. Skeleton towers are overall the single best outdoor defense you can build. Skeleton towers are my number one as they're the single best way to defend your loot. You need to build as many of them as possible if you want to defend your stuff. Place them right in front and around your base. Ideally, you place them in a way that they are in range of each other and shoot enemies from multiple sides. Stick to the end of the video and I will show you how you can exceed the turret limit with all the turrets in range still shooting at your enemies. The most important part in all cases is that you have no blind spot. You need to have turrets facing in all possible directions. The huge benefit of skeleton towers is that they are easy to build, can be built basically everywhere, deal huge amounts of damage, and if built right, can hold off enemies for a long time. Just hide your freaking generators. I can't say this enough. So many people lose all their stuff because their generators can simply be sniped way too easily. Ground and terrain turrets in and around your base are a must-have. They are my number 2 as they complement skeleton towers perfectly and are particularly useful in caves. The problem with turret walls is that the wall can easily be blown by a cannon or taken down with tech if you do not own a force field. Placing turrets without walls and using the terrain is a much better option. Ground and terrain turrets are far harder to hit with a cannon and cannot be taken out with tech. If you're building a freestanding base, the best would be to place a mixture consisting of tech and heavy turrets around your base. If you're building in a cave, place ground, ceiling and wall turrets. Especially in caves, I would suggest not building tech turrets in narrow parts, as they can easily be shadow tanked. The best implementation of ground turrets are hidden ninja turrets. They're basically the same as ground turrets, but they're simply more hidden and are used to catch your enemies off guard. Especially in caves, you should place them in sections where they will shoot your enemies from behind or from different directions. This does not mean that you should not build turret walls. Turret walls can look intimidating and will scare off most enemies. Double door turret walls are currently pretty much the meta. They are my number 3 as they are the basis for almost all skeleton towers that are currently playable in the current meta. Basically every tribe should build turret walls and towers with this concept, as it is currently the most consistent and the most durable. Damage is split evenly between walls, and even if you destroy some turrets, most of the other turrets will continue shooting. You have to place those turret walls basically everywhere where enemies have to run straight into the wall. For example, narrow points in caves where stegos do not fit through. It is also the foundation for many other builds and should be your primary way of building defenses. You build it by placing a foundation, setting a fetch wall, adding a turret to the fetch wall and replacing the wall by placing a metal doorway on the wall. After you did this, you need to add an extra layer of walls by placing 2 foundations right in front of your turret and then add double door walls as defense. If somebody now tries to blow your turrets, damage will be distributed between all layers of walls. Especially if you're building in caves, choke points are the single best way to deal a ton of damage to the enemy and block them off from looting your stuff. They are my number 4 because they're mainly playable in caves and red holes, which means not everyone can use them. Choke points that you cannot ride through are overall the best defense for your base. There is literally no easier way to defend your base than to look for a place that cannot be entered with dinosaurs. That's why many smaller and larger tribes build in red holes. Those that have crouch parts that you simply cannot get through with creatures are simply way too strong. This means that opponents have to find a way to soak your turrets as a player or to blow them up somehow. Cluster grenades and tech grenades are often used to blow them up as they still do quite a bit of damage. It is best to place 1 tech at the choke point, as these will knock the enemies out of the crouch part, and then, in addition, 1 to 2 heavies to intercept rockets and explosives. This should be enough for most crouch holes. Rideable choke points are a bit harder to defend, but they're overall still very good places to place your defense. To defend mounted choke points, however, it is absolutely necessary to have tech turrets. Tech turrets are the only good defense against mounted stegos, golems and terror birds. Their knockback knocks back smaller creatures and their splash damage kills the riders of larger creatures. It is also a good idea to block these choke points with railings so that opponents cannot run up to your turrets. I did not include all concepts in this video, as many builds are very situational and cannot be used by everyone. Cave crossings, where a path splits into two ways, are perfect to deal a ton of damage, as you can place double the amount of turrets facing at your enemies. It is important to block off your enemies at these points as long as possible, because the sheer amount of turrets can hold off enemies for a while. Cave crossings, where two or more paths merge into one, are perfect for surprising your enemies from behind with extra damage. You can build walls inwards and outwards, so that even if your enemies have passed the wall that is parallel to it in the corridor will now fire at them from behind. If you build like this, the enemies will still have to get past all the other walls if they want to safely access your next defense. Chandeliers are pretty dope in large caves, like the North Ice Cave on the center. Raiding upwards is pretty painful, as you cannot use flyers in caves. Chandeliers are the best to place over moon pools, like in the North Ice on the center, as they're pretty much undestroyable as long as enemies are stuck in the water. Meaning, a perfectly placed chandelier needs to be soaked, and soaking buys you a ton of time to hide your stuff. Okay. Now that we've ranked the most important concepts, you need to know some basics, if you cannot simply build one of the concepts I've shown to you. Always favor ground and terrain turrets over large turret walls. Large turret walls may look intimidating, but they can be destroyed quite easily by cannons or tech. It's much harder to take out all the turrets if you have to destroy them one by one. It also takes a lot more time to destroy one turret at a time than it does to destroy an entire wall at once. This does not mean that you shouldn't build turret walls. It means that you have to know when and where to build them. As soon as you got tech, the most important setting on your turrets is player only. It works for all turrets, but especially well for tech. Player only turrets still shoot at enemies if they mounted their creatures, and all types of turrets will be able to snipe players off their tames. Tech turrets work the best, as they do splash damage and hit players even if they're riding stegos, which heavy turrets struggle to. Heavy still hit them, but they really struggle to hit them. It is not enough to simply place as many turrets as possible at random. More turrets is more good, but the right mix is important. When placing turrets, pay attention to the following ratios. Place techs and heavies in a 2:1 ratio, meaning 2 tech turrets per 1 heavy. 1 plant X per 30 turrets in total, and at least 1 per wall. 2 Tesla coils per 30 turrets, and at least 2 per wall, with 1 set to bright mode and 1 set to volatile mode. If you place your turrets in the right ratio, you basically place them in sets of 20 techs, 10 heavies, 1 plant X and 2 Tesla coils, totaling in 33 turrets per set, meaning if you cap out your turrets, you got 99 turrets of 3 sets in 1 wall, meaning you got room for 1 additional plant X or Tesla coil. I usually set all my turrets too high, as I want them to shoot as early as possible, but there can be some situations where you want your turrets give a little more space to let your enemies come closer. And for God's sake, do not use the copy to all turrets option. Using this option is the single best way how you can frig up your configurations. The configuration of your techs shall be something like this: 17 out of 20 or 85% of your techs shall be player only. They shoot at players and mounted creatures like stegos. 1 or 5% of your techs shall be set to all, therefore killing wild dinos like wild Atros kited into your wall. 1 or 5% of your techs shall be set to player and mounted, therefore soakers. 1 or 5% of your techs shall be set to player and tamed, therefore tamed Atroplurus and C4 suicide creatures. Heavies are mainly for getting rid of rockets, and even if ARB is pretty expensive, it is way easier to craft than element shards. 2 or 20% of your heavies shall be player only. 4 or 40% of your heavies shall be player and tamed, and 40% of your heavies shall be player and mounted creatures. Your Tesla coils basically add some crowd control and let your other turrets deal some additional damage. If you place 2 Tesla coils, set 1 to bright mode and player and mounted for some additional slow. This works pretty well against Terrorbird runners, and set 1 to volatile mode for some additional damage. The plant X only task is to slow, annoy and blind your enemies. If you play in a cave, just add 1 additional Tesla coil and set it to whatever you like the best. Okay, MU calculation is important to know. With well-prepared MU calculation, you can make enemies take significantly longer to empty your turrets. Once I had enemies raid my base for 1 whole week without taking a break. I did not fight back and they needed 1 week to empty my turrets. I do not consider plant eggs and Tesla coils for this section, as they are not that important to be considered for this. The next section is explained for vanilla settings. On your cluster this can be different. A tech turret can hold a stack size of 1000 shards per slot and a total of 5 slots, meaning the turret can hold 5000 shards. The tech turret fires at the rate of 2 shards per second, meaning it takes 42 minutes to empty 1 tech turret. A heavy turret can hold a stack size of 100 bullets per shot and a total of 58 slots, meaning the turret can hold 5800 bullets. The heavy turret fires at the rate of 4 bullets per second, meaning it takes 24 minutes to empty 1 heavy turret. This means if you got smart placement so that enemies have to soak your turrets, it can take them up to 24 minutes for a heavy and 42 minutes for a tech just by soaking it. This shows how important it is to have turrets in a way enemies have to soak them one by one. For a long time, for me, exceeding the turret limit was something pretty scary. But actually it is pretty simple. If you got walls in close proximity, you always need to build the wall in the center first. Cap it with 50 turrets. If you now build a wall in front and behind that wall, both walls can house an additional 50 turrets on their own. This means you can now place 150 turrets in an area where you could only build 100 turrets. I hope you liked this video and I'm thrilled to read if this video has helped you. Hit the like button, leave a comment below for the algorithm and consider subbing to the channel. Alright, Frodo.